Workers' compensation. When you hear these two words, it spans across all kinds of topics from workplace injuries, lost wages, medical expenses, the list goes on and on. And then we talk about workplace issues like discrimination, harassment, culture, safety, and vacation time. So today we've got two lawyers with us to help clear up some of the confusion. We have Nicole Patino with the law offices of Nicole Patino and Gabe Snyder with Ward Black Law. Now they're tackling all your workers' comp questions and workers' issues questions. What you need to do is get those questions to them. So 336-379-5775. You text in your question. It is anonymous, and you get your question answered live on air. All right, let's start off with, Gabe, the common thing, a question that a lot of people have. If that person happens to be responsible, like for their own injury while working, does working compensation still pay? And give me like an example of that.
Yeah, sure. So the short answer is yes. In order for workers' comp to apply, you have to have an accident while in the course and scope of employment. So a lot of times, I would say 99% of times when clients come in my office, they start with, well, my employer did this wrong, they did this wrong. And I go, well, honestly, it doesn't matter. Just as long as there's an accident, it's no fault. So even if it's your own fault, you can still get workers' comp. So an example would be a truck driver who's speeding or falls asleep or does something negligent and runs off the road and causes his own injury. Workers' comp would still apply to any of the injuries that are sustained.
Okay, so that is like kind of your intro to workers' comp. We're going to have a couple more questions about that, but let's also go over to some workers' issues so that you can also get an idea of things that you can ask about. Let's talk about vacation time, because that is something we all are interested in. Is vacation time something that employers are required to provide you, paid time off?
They're not required to provide you with paid time off or vacation in North Carolina.
At all?
No. But if the employer does provide vacation, then they have to have a policy which lays out the terms, how it's accrued, and how it's forfeited.
So they have to have it actually written out?
Yes.
Do they have to give you a lunch hour or a 15-minute break?
No, there's no law in North Carolina or a federal law that requires that, unless you are under 16, a youth employee. But no, they're not required to do that.
Okay, all right, interesting. All right, let's go back to workers' compensation. What does workers' compensation pay for?
Great question. So I call them the big two. Workers' compensation is going to pay for your lost wages and your medical expenses. So there's different forms that this can take. That's kind of complicated. I can't go into each of them, but I'll hit the highlight. So the classic example of lost wages is when the checks that you get paid while you're out of work from your workplace injury. They call that temporary total disability. That's TTD. At the end of your case, you can also get something called PPD, which is permanent partial disability, and that's based off of a rating that's defined by statute. Take your compensation rate, you times that by the weeks for the body part, and the percentage that the doctor assigns. For medical compensation, the classic example would be doctor's appointments, but there's some cool cases where you can even get bathroom renovations, YMCA memberships, not lawn care, but almost. An attorney tried, but anything that you couldn't do before that you, because of your work injury, workers' comp pay for, such as mileage and transportation as well, to and from appointments.
Now, is that something like when that happens to you, workers' comp, is there like a checklist of those things that you can do, or is that something like you really wouldn't know that, you have to have a lawyer to do that?
You definitely want to get a lawyer. I wish that they would provide a checklist. That would be very nice. But unfortunately, the insurance company tries to pay as little as possible. And so sometimes you need some creative thinking and an aggressive attorney to go after some of those things, particularly when you have someone with severe disability after a bad injury and they can't make it in and out of their bathroom and shower because of either disabling broken bones or paraplegia or something like that. Those bathroom renovations is something that really can make a big difference in a person's life and should be paid for by workers' comp.
And that's an extreme case, of course, of workers' comp, but it could be something as simple as you were walking at work and you missed a step and you broke your ankle, and so you just need some time off and that kind of thing.
Yeah, the most common examples are your time out of work. They'll pay you your average weekly wage. You'll have 2/3 of that, and the idea is that they take out like a third for taxes. In a way, would be the reasoning. I wasn't there making the law, but that's their reasoning. And so that and your doctor's appointments and doctor's visits would be what would be mostly covered.
Okay, all right. All right, Nicole, let's get back to you. Let's get back to PTO. Now, let's say that you quit or you get fired. Does a company, if they're giving you PTO, do they have to pay you money for that PTO if you quit or are fired?
So it depends. If the written policy does not include a forfeiture clause, so if it doesn't say you use it or lose it, or if it doesn't have something that says if you're fired for misconduct, then they don't pay PTO or vacation pay, they are required to pay vacation time if there's not that written policy. And if you run into a situation when you're not paid that vacation time in your next regular pay cycle, then you can report that to the North Carolina Department of Labor and they can help you collect that vacation pay that you're owed.
Yeah, I know we get a lot of emails and we get a lot of calls saying, hey, I didn't get this, that, and the other, and they want us to do something about it. And I'm like, the first thing you need to do, though, is make a claim with the Department of Labor. Because it doesn't really matter if we call, it really matters if there is evidence that supports all that.
Absolutely.
So when they do make a claim, what is that like? What do they have to give as evidence?
They call, they explain what they have. If you have the vacation pay policy, if you have your most recent pay stubs, but really you just tell your story to the North Carolina Department of Labor and they can investigate, they can actually look for some of that investigation or that evidence, and they will contact the employer too to find out if that forfeiture policy exists and whether you're entitled to that amount of money. And they do it all at no cost to the employee.
And that is the state making a call on your behalf. And so your employer is going to then respond to that because they're going to respond to the state. Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break. We want to remind you, you can text us 336-379-5775. We want to get your question answered.